Hello again everyone, this is Eric and welcome to my memory lane number 98, which is for the episode The Incident, the final episode of my favorite last season, season 5, and also my number one last episode overall, and also one of my favorite TV episodes in general. There is so much I need to cover with this memory lane because this episode gives me feelings that I cannot describe by simple words. It's basically everything I could expect from last episode. It has shocking moments, emotional moments, strong character interactions, a major character death, a beautiful soundtrack, and it is also a double-sized episode, a 90 minutes long episode, and it basically gives me a movie vibe when watching it. So yes, this video will get long, probably longer than anything I've done before, but it's the only way I can properly describe these episodes to you. So, I hope you enjoy this video. Let us begin. Okay, so for this time I'm making a change of scenery. It's a really beautiful weather today here and I have an opportunity to make this video outside for a change. So I will be going on a walk through the forest as I make this video. So let me begin with the story, and the first thing will be the opening scene. So Jacob, the mysterious authority of the island, the leader of the others, was one of those mystery elements that have been introduced in previous seasons. We first properly heard of him in season 3, and at that time it seemed that he's some sort of a spiritual presence, or some sort of demonic presence, I can say. And then later that we actually found that Christian was in his cabin, not Jacob. And towards the end of season 5 it seems that Jacob is actually not there in that cabin but somewhere else, because Ben actually locked in previous episode implied that Ben probably never saw Jacob, and in this episode that got confirmed. So it was pretty much clear to me that in this episode we will finally get to meet the man behind the curtain, the mysterious authority of the island, and I was right. But it was quite an interesting introduction, I can say, because Jacob, they didn't drag the moment he appeared on screen, and they showed him in the very first scene of the episode, which is actually the flashback about 150 years ago. But yes, we saw Jacob in that very moment. He was an ordinary person, blonde hair, white shirt, nothing special actually. He was doing everyday stuff, making that, whatever it is called, catching fish and having a breakfast on the beach. And then the mysterious man who was dressed in black approached him. He somehow looked as the opposite of him to me, and he actually was something like that. And that mysterious man expressed how much he wants to kill Jacob, and he was somehow unable to do so. So Jacob told him that he will need to find a loophole if he wanted to kill him. So yes, that was some sort of a teaser scene, which at first did not seem that much connected to the story, but it turned out to be a very important one for this episode and for the next season. And what I also find interesting about the flashbacks in this episode, we saw how Jacob was connected to every main character's past. There were flashbacks from their childhood and their recent moments, and we saw that Jacob appeared to everyone at least one point in their lives. Paying for the lunchbox Kate stole from a shop when she was a child, or attending Sun and Jean's wedding, and also the moment when Jack had to count to 5. We actually saw the scene on screen for the first time. And also more recent moments, such as for Said and Hurley, the time when they spent off the island between season 4 and season 5. For example, Jacob somehow, I can say, saved Said from being killed, but it's for the cost of Nadia's life. And he was also the one to tell Hurley to go back to the island, and he gave him that guitar case, so that also explained the mystery. That also explained the mystery why Hurley went back to the island. So I can say these flashbacks were really nice point of the story, because they were somehow building up to the moment when we will see Jacob in the present time as Locke, not really Locke actually, and Ben were on their way to him. So let's move now to the main story, and let's deal first with the 77 story in the Dharma. Last episode basically brought the figures in place, and in this episode the action actually happened. So Jack and Said got to the jackhead, and Said managed to remove the core, which was small enough to carry and also powerful enough to supposedly destroy the swan site. And of course now they had a problem how to get there, because the underground cavern only had one exit, and that was from the water, and another exit was through the Dharma village, the barracks. And of course Said and Jack were both wanted there, if I can say that. So they took a risk and ventured through the barracks, and was dressed into Dharma jumpsuits, so they would divert. Just a moment that I find the path. Oh, here, yes. So they both dressed in Dharma jumpsuit to divert attention, but Said had the accident, was not really lucky, as Roger Linus spotted him and he remembered to be the supposed hostile, and he shot him in the stomach. Said survived the shot, but he was very injured and he started to really bleed out. But Jack managed to get him out of the barracks with the bomb. So they got help from Jean, Hurley and Miles as well, as they picked them up in the van. So from their part they were on their way to the swan site. And now moving to the second part, which happened on the submarine. In previous episode we saw how Sawyer and Juliet were ready to leave the island and leaving everyone behind. And of course things got complicated when Kate joined them, and she told them that Jack is planning to reset basically everything, and that was totally unacceptable for Sawyer. And Juliet managed to somehow convince him to go back and stop Jack from doing that, so they went to the captain and convinced him to stop the submarine. They went out with the rubber boat and went back to the beach, and they also met Rose and Bernard there, that we haven't seen from the very early episode of season 5. They supposedly got away from the Flaming Arrow attack, and they were living in the jungle in a wooden cabin that they made. So yes, it was basically a cameo appearance of them, and they didn't really play much role in this episode, only to show that they're still together and that they're completely fine with everything that was happening around them. So yes, two groups were on their way to the swan site, one to detonate the bomb and the second one to stop the first group from detonating a bomb, if I can say that. So at this point I will make a slight jump back to 2007. I need to mention a couple of things there. First is that Ilana and her team were on their way to somewhere, and they were carrying a big crate with something hidden inside. And that thing inside was supposedly a big game changer, according to Ilana, and it literally was something like that. So they came across an abandoned cabin that was supposedly Jacob's, but in this episode it was practically confirmed that Jacob didn't live in that cabin for a long time, and that someone else was using it. So yes, Jacob was apparently somewhere else. And at the same time, Locke revealed to Ben that Ben will have to be the one to kill Jacob, and Ben was somehow willing to obey him because he was told so by Alex a couple episodes ago. So yes, he was a bit reluctant to do so, but Locke really justified why Jacob needed to die. So yes, that will be for 2007 for this time. Okay, let's go back to 77 where shit is about to happen. So as Jack was on his way to the Swan site, Sawyer, Kate and Juliet basically ambushed him. Sawyer stood like a Rambo in the middle of the road with a gun. He wanted 5 minutes to talk to Jack and try to convince him not to do it. He made so many points that it's simply wrong and that Kate will be back in handcuffs if they do this. And I can see that I was on Sawyer's side at this point because it really seemed wrong to me. But Jack was adamant that he will do it and that it's their destiny. I can say that this interaction and a couple others were one of the strongest character interactions for me. There was so much power in all these words that were said, and after spending so much time with these characters, I feel this episode really brought the characters to their limit. And after these 5 minutes, Sawyer attacked Jack, and they got involved in some serious fight that left both of them bloody, basically. And it was only Juliet who managed to stop Sawyer from not choking Jack to death, basically. It was really the climax of their, how can I say, rivalry in the series. And also Sawyer's anger that they managed to ruin his life in Dharma finally reached its peak. But then Juliet came to him and told him that she's also on Jack's side, and Sawyer was basically heartbroken when he heard that. And the reason Juliet supposedly went on Jack's side was that she saw how Sawyer was looking at Kate, and she felt that maybe they were not meant to be together, and she remembered how when her parents divorced, who said something like that, that if some people love each other, they may be not always meant to be together. It was such a sad moment, I can say, for me. Really, I loved Sawyer and Juliet together, and it was really sad to see her so broken, I can say. But apparently she was able to convince Sawyer to go along with Jack's plan. At the same time, Jack talked to Kate, as she was the last person that objected his decision, and he asked her this time why she didn't want to talk about Aaron when she came back to him, and she revealed that she wanted to reunite him with Claire. That was her main reason to come back, but now Claire was nowhere to be found, and Jack assured her that by detonating Jughead they can bring Claire and Aaron back together. So Kate was very reluctant in this situation, but as she said in early season 5 in flashback, I've always been with you, and she was with him this time as well. I really love these two characters and their interactions, especially in this season. They spent so many moments together in the past. They went through so much ups, downs, emotional moments, and they really formed a bond that couldn't be broken like that. And this episode really proved it. So yes, most of the oceanic survivors were now fine with Jack's plan to detonate Jughead and stop the incident. Okay, now the big stuff is really about to happen. After all these character interactions, the powerful moments, it was ready for the main act to detonate Jughead. So Jack ventured to the Swan site and tried to smuggle himself to the shaft. but Phil and his security team arrived first, and a massive shootout occurred, possibly the biggest one we've seen in the entire Lost series. So at this point they really didn't care on who they were shooting at, especially Jack. But at the same time Miles expressed his doubt that if anyone actually thought that maybe the bomb will cause the incident instead of stopping it. And that was something I've been suspecting for most of the episode, that it will somehow turn that way. They killed or disarmed most of the Dharma security members. Everything was ready for the big act. And Jack went to the shaft and dropped Jughead in it. And the face expressions of the other oceanic survivors were quite heartbreaking. Kate was in tears. Sawyer was really sad. And Juliet as well. It was really the climax of this episode. But no explosion happened. Nothing at all. And some seconds later, the real incident happened. It was basically a similar situation than in season 2 finale, but this time on a much larger scale. Everything metal started to get dragged into that shaft, including the crane, the chains, the metal poles. And in this mess, Phil also got killed when a metal pole impaled him through the chest. I wasn't really sorry for him. But what Miles said somehow became true. It was not really the bomb that caused the incident, but Dan's plan didn't work at all. Because whatever happened, and this episode it proved completely that the incident, they basically played a role in the incident. And in all this mess, a horrific event happened when chains got stuck in Juliet's legs and she got dragged to the shaft. And despite Soren's and Kate's efforts to save her, the electromagnetic power was too strong and she was basically in danger to get her body ripped in two, I can say. So after a heartbreaking goodbye to Sawyer, she let go of his hand and fell down. I can say Sawyer's reaction here was... I don't even know how to properly describe it, but it really touched me on an emotional level. It actually touches me now as I'm saying this. Juliet became a major casualty of this episode, and a really horrific event, I can say. And yes, it was the end of Sawyer and Juliet's relationship for the series, and really dark moment overall. I think Juliet is my second saddest death overall, just behind Locke. So yes, they failed in resetting the future, and I can say that I was quite expecting it, because I really believed in whatever happened, and I somehow wasn't able to believe that anything could be changed. And yes, this episode basically proved it. But the incident and Juliet's death were not the only big part of this episode. In fact, the biggest was the, you know what, moment happened in 2007. So Locke and Ben arrived to the leg, the four-toed leg we saw in season 2 finale, and it was supposedly Jacob's residence. So Locke and Ben ventured inside, and Ben was ready to kill him. So it wasn't that special at this point. But then Ilana and her team appeared in this camp with their crate. She wanted to speak to Richard, and she opened that crate. And now it was what the... you know what. the crate contained a body of real John Locke, who was permanently dead. He never came back to the island. He never came back to life on the island. And both Ben and Richard were right that something like that is utterly impossible. And it was quite an emotional impact for me, because Locke was one of my favorite characters, and of course I thought he came back to life, and he didn't. The Life and Death of Jeremy Bentham was the final episode to feature this character, and the person in this episode was not him. But who was it? Who was this Locke guy who went to Jacob to kill him? Well, it soon became clear when they finally met Jacob, and he told this Locke guy, "I see you finally found the loophole." So this man was the same mysterious man as we saw in the opening scene, the man in black, who was later revealed to be the smoke monster as well. And this was the loophole, convincing Ben to kill him. Jacob tried to talk to Ben, and he also gave him a choice that he does not need to kill him. And then Ben delivered one of my personal favorite speeches in Lost. How he was always ignored by Jacob, that they always told him how he's not ready, how he needs to wait. But Locke apparently gets marched up to him like he was Moses, as he said. And after he ended his speech with "What about me?" Jacob only responded, "What about you?" And Ben stabbed him in the heart, killing him instantly, basically. Jacob was introduced in this episode and also died in this episode. The most powerful man on the island was gone. Completely. Actually, not completely, because he will make several appearances next season. But this is how the 2007 story ended, with my personal biggest twist in Lost. No other twist shocked me as much as this revelation that Locke was permanently dead and that this man was not him. Really, there were so many big twists, but this one was the most impressive for me. But before I finish this memory lane, there is one bit I need to touch. So going back to 77, we saw that Juliet somehow survived the fall into the shaft, and she saw the jackhead there, and which didn't detonate. So she grabbed the rock, and with all her strength, she was grievously injured. She bled even through mouth, and she started to hit that jackhead bomb, trying to make it to detonate, and she succeeded, and there was a bright light and the end of the episode. What the hell just happened now? Did they really change the past, or anything like that? We don't know. Not at the end of this episode. We have to wait till season 6. So basically it's a cliffhanger ending, and the real cliffhanger ending in this case. So, I think I covered most of the episode, basically all the episode, I think, with this memory lane. I'm sure it is the longest one I ever made, but as this is my #1 episode, I really had to make something special for this memory lane. And yes, this episode gives me so many special feelings. Like I said at the beginning, I cannot properly describe the feelings it always leaves me with. The last time I actually had a headache next day because of my excitement of that episode that I watched the day before. So yes, it has everything I like, and I basically told you everything. The biggest shocking moment, one of the saddest deaths, the action scenes, the character interactions, the beautiful soundtrack, and we finally got to meet Jacob. Yes, I'm completely sure this episode is my #1, with the end being my #2. So, this is pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's really long, longer than anything I did before, but if you're watching this now, that means you got to the end of the video, and I really appreciate if you did so. So that will be all. I hope you enjoyed, and goodbye. See you next time.